Recording. Okay, perfect. So we're going to read Bezrat Hashem tomorrow, not tomorrow, on Shabbat, we're going to read PARSHAT MISHPATIM. And PARSHAT MISHPATIM comes immediately after we receive the Torah. Right? So last week, PARSHAT YITRO, this is when we received the Torah. And this week, we are dwelling into many laws of the Torah. Some of them, most of them are very technical laws. And our sages explained that the idea here is that after the Jews have experienced, the uplifting of receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai, speaking to Hashem, etc., now comes the time that the Torah is actually translated into their day-to-day reality. Okay, so among them, we have the mitzvah of, let me share the screen from here. Let's see if it's going to work. Among these, we have the mitzvah of, yeah, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Unbelievable. Okay, thank God. Now we're making not only good use of technology, but good use of complex technology. Yeah. Okay, so there's a very interesting observation of what the Rebbe is going to learn today. It has also it's based on history, the history of the recent history, not the most recent, but recent history of the Jewish people. So, as we said, right after the Jewish people experienced on Matan Torah, they've experienced speaking to Hashem, speaking to God, and all those lofty, experiences that they've had. Then the Jews also said, in this week Torah portion, actually, the Torah portion begins with the details of the Torah commandments that we have. Kenji, please, source number 1.
These are the laws that you shall set before them. Should you buy a Hebrew servant, he shall work for 6 years, and in the 7th year, he shall go out to freedom without charge.
Yeah. And the Torah goes on and on and on and on for many, I would call it technical, dry mitzvot. After the experience of I am your God, keep the Shabbat, and, very spiritual and lofty, high mitzvot, then comes a lot of technicality. Most of them are dealing with between men to men. Okay, so slaves, all the laws of slaves, God forbid if somebody kills someone, and protecting of one's properties, that many things. After about 100 statements or 100 verses in the Torah, then the Torah moves back to discuss the receiving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. Okay, so we go backwards to last week, where the Jews received the Torah on Mount Sinai. And what does the Torah says? This is right in the middle of this week Torah portion. Kenji, please. So it says, I will tell you, it's the preparation to receive the Torah. Okay, how was the preparation to receive the Torah on Mount Sinai? Yes, please.
God said to Moshe, "Come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and prostrate yourself from afar. Moshe alone shall approach God, but they shall not approach, and the people shall not ascend with him." So Moshe came and told the people all the words of God and all the laws. And all the people answered in unison and said, "All the words that God has spoken, we will do."
Yeah. And this is one of the most important things, because this is what the Jews said, all the words that God has spoken, we will do. This is when we accept, the receiving of the Torah. So when all this incident happened, so Rashi comes immediately to say, Yeah,
all the words of God, the command to separate from their wives and maintain distance from the mountain.
right. So because they had to keep distance from the mountain, and because on that mountain, Mount Sinai, it's going to be the mountain where the Torah will be given. So the next morning, Moshe Rabbeinu is building an altar, and on the altar is making 12 tombs, each one against a tribe, one of the tribe of the Jewish people, and is bringing offering sacrifices on them, and he sprinkles from the blood on the altar and on the Jewish people to symbolize the covenant that is now being made between the Jewish people to Hashem. Okay, and Moshe Rabbeinu is also writing on the Torah book all the story from the beginning of the creation until that moment. And then Moshe Rabbeinu reads to the Jewish people again from the Torah, from what he wrote, all the way from the beginning of the creation until that day. And all the Jewish people reply. What do they reply?
He took the book of the covenant and read it within the hearing of the people. And they said, all that God spoke we will do, and we will listen.
Yeah,
Book
so
of
we
the
will,
covenant.
yeah, but first, it's very important. We will do, and then we will listen. The Jewish people said, okay, whatever you're gonna say, we're gonna do. Now tell me, we want to listen. What are the commandments that Hashem is giving us? This is very unique to the Jewish people, that they are first committed to do, and only then they want to know what they have committed to. So Rashi says, what did Moshe Rabbeinu read to them? Because this is before the Jewish people even received the Torah on Mount Sinai. So this is at Mount Sinai, just when we are parking on the Mount Sinai, before we receive the Torah. So what was written in that Torah? What is the commandment that are written in that Torah?
Book of the covenant. From Genesis until the giving of the Torah and the commandments, they had been instructed at Marah.
Yeah. So this is what Rashi says. All of this is happening before Matan Torah. So what are the commandments that the Jewish people are accepting on themselves? So it's all the commandments that the Jewish people were receiving before the 10 commandments. So there is Shabbat, and there is the Passover offering, and there is the 7 commandments of the Noahide laws, and different other commandments that Jews received before the Torah. Okay, and this is why. What do we extract from it? That even though this is in the middle of the portion after the week after we received the Torah, this is where it's written in the Torah, but nevertheless, historically, it happened before we received the Torah. And Rashi says this clearly. Yes.
To Moshe he said, this was said before the 10 commandments. On the 4th of Sivan, Moshe was told to ascend.
So this is before Moshe Rabbeinu ascended to Mount Sinai to actually receive the Torah and the whole story with the 10 commandments. Okay, now you ask yourself, why is it written in the Torah after it actually happened in reality? So there is a very known rule, En mukdam umeuchar baTorah. That could be that something is written in the Torah, but historically it happened much after, and could be the opposite. Something is written in the Torah, but historically it happened before. Yeah, that's a general rule in the Torah. So could be that the Torah says something, the Torah describes something that happened before or after where it is actually written in the Torah. Okay, now, so based on this, so when the Jewish people said Na'aseh v'nishma, the Jewish people first accept doing, commitment to doing, and only then they said we will want to hear. It happened before the Torah was received. So now the Rebbe is asking a question. The question is, I understand the rule that the Torah can write something before or after it happened, but why? What's the logic behind it? So we may not be able to understand the full logic of the Torah, but we still have a commandment to understand what the Torah means to say, and also the order of which the Torah is writing the stories in it's written in the Torah, the stories, the chronological, or not the chronological, but the order, the way it's written in the Torah, it's also to teach us something. So what is it? Why in the middle of Parashat Mishpatim, which Parashat Mishpatim speaks about a lot about logical and technical mitzvot between man to man and between and how to keep all the laws of slaves and murders and keeping properties and all those things. In the middle of it, we have the story of before the receiving of the Torah, where the Jewish people saying to Moshe Rabbeinu, whatever we will first do, and then we will live. What's the meaning of it? So now let's delve in to the teaching of the Rebbe, and it's going to be beautiful where the Rebbe is taking it. Not just beautiful, but so fundamental, and has so much implication. What we're going to learn today has so much implication in the Jewish people, but also I think in every one of us, in the life of every one of us. Okay, let's dive into the words and the teachings of the Rebbe. Chenji, please.
Three categories of mitzvot. It is known that there are three categories of commandments: decrees, testimonies, and laws. Decrees are matters that are beyond human understanding, as in the phrase, I have issued a decree and established a statute. You have no authority to question it.
Meaning a decree, meaning that you will have no chance to understand why there is a decree. For example, I'll give you just one example. Okay, the laws of a red after. Okay, you take red after, and the red after you mix it with water, whatever, and then you sprinkle it at someone, and that person who before that was unpure becomes pure. Yes. Why? I don't know. This is God's will. Does it make sense? No. Will it ever make sense? Not to me and you. Okay, so this is category number one. It's called decrees, chukim of Hashem. Let's move on to category two.
Testimonies are practices that are performed as a remembrance of a significant past event. However, these are matters that depend on a person's wishes. They aren't logical necessities. If people wish, they create a remembrance for something, and if they don't wish to, they don't.
For example, we're going to celebrate in 2 weeks, we're going to celebrate Purim, right? So Purim, it's a testimony for something that happened some over 2,000 years ago. Okay, is it something which is mandatory? Of course, for us, yes. But I'm saying in general, to remember something that happened to you, something important that happened to you in the past, is it something necessary? No, some people do it. Some people don't do it. But once you do it, it makes sense to do it, okay? There is an historical event, something very, very important to me or to my family or to my nation or to the whole world happened on that day, so I want to remember it. So in order to remember it, I do a certain mitzvah. For example, in order to remember Purim, I'm going to read the story of Esther. So it makes sense. Or for another example, we make Kiddush on Friday night. What is the Kiddush on Friday night? It's Zecher, okay, to remember the creation of heaven and earth. Or to remember that Hashem rested on the seventh day. So Shabbat, why do we keep Shabbat? Because Shabbat, it's a testimony for Hashem creating the world in 7 days. So this is the second category of mitzvot, testimonies. The first one was decrees. The second one is testimony. Now comes the third one.
Laws are matters that human reason itself obligates a person to follow. For this reason, they are called rational commandments. For example, the laws discussed in this week's Torah portion, the punishment of a thief, the laws governing guardians, etc.
Yeah. So laws are laws which makes logical sense. Okay? And every human being has to behave in that way. Okay? Regardless of his background. Okay, and the Rebbe continues.
This is also the meaning of the term laws, legal rulings. The definition of a legal ruling is that it is not something dependent on a person's choice, whether one wishes to comply or not. Rather, when a court issues a ruling, it must be carried out.
Yeah. So it must be carried out by everyone, even if somebody doesn't like that specific law. It has to be carried by everyone. Why? Because it makes sense. It makes logical sense to everyone. So we have three categories of mitzvot: the decrees, the testimonies, and the laws. And what is our Torah discuss? Our this week Torah portion discusses mostly laws. The Torah begins with ואלה המשפטים אשר תשים לפניהם. Those are the laws that you will put in front of them, that you will teach them. Let's see.
Moshe commands the laws. Concerning this, it is said to Moshe, "These are the laws that you shall place before them." Meaning, even though these are commandments that human reason itself obligates, Moshe still had to command them to the Jewish people in the name of God. This is especially evident in light of what is explained in the Midrash, which Rashi cites in his commentary on the Torah. Wherever the term "and these" is used, it comes to add to what came before it. Just as the earlier ones, the 10 commandments in the portion of Vitro, were given at Sinai, so too these, the laws in this portion, were given at Sinai.
Okay. Meaning to say that all the laws that are given in the Torah, that are logical laws, they are also giving to Moshe Rabbeinu exactly like the 10 commandments were given by Moshe Rabbeinu. And that raises a question.
At first glance, this seems contradictory. After all, if something was given at Sinai, then it makes no difference whether it is a decree or a law. Everything given at Sinai must be observed. On the other hand, if a law is obligated by human reason, then why is there any need for a command from Sinai at all? As the Talmud states in Tractate Eruvin, if the Torah had not been given, we would have learned proper conduct even from animals.
So let's take, for example, the commandments of, I don't know, not to kill. Okay? So not to kill or to keep one's property. Okay, I don't need the Torah to tell me not to kill, right? Because every human being, every logical human being knows that he shouldn't kill. And we could learn proper conduct even from animals. So why do I need the Torah? Why do I need Moshe Rabbeinu to, so to say, waste his energy and to write it in the Torah? And it must be, what's the point of it? Let the Torah remains in the world of decrees, or the categories of mitzvot of testimonies, which human logic will not, otherwise, if it's not written in the Torah, human logic will not force you to think this way, and keep all the logical mitzvot, all the mishpatim, all the laws, keep them for human being to make them. And so what we learn from this?
Yet, even the laws that reason itself obligates are stated in the Torah as having been given at Sinai. There is nothing superfluous in the Torah. Just as nothing is missing from it, nothing extra was added to it. There's a general principle that God didn't create anything in the world in vain. And this is also the more clear regarding the Torah. Since there can't be anything superfluous, it must be the case that we cannot rely on the obligation imposed by reason. It must be that the command in the Torah adds something new and fundamental even to matters that are already required by human reason.
And that's the question. If I will get to it, I will get to the same commandments with my human reasoning, what is the Torah adding to this logic by bringing it and writing it in the Torah? Okay, the question is the question clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So now let's move on to the Rebbe's explanation, and the Rebbe brings a very, very practical and a very, very interesting example. Okay, let's see the explanation.
The explanation of this, albeit briefly, is as follows. The purpose of any intellectual matter is that it should not remain only in the realm of thought, but should also be carried into actual behavior. Study is meant to lead to action, meaning that the way a person acts in practice should follow the dictates of logic.
Okay? So the world of Torah is a world of practicism. The Torah needs to be practiced, okay? Not only something that you study, okay?
This is why we need a commandment in Torah. Without it, there can be obstructions that prevent what is understood intellectually from being carried out in practice due to interference of various side considerations. First and foremost,
So
among
now
these,
the Rebbe starts with the example that it brings. Yes.
first and foremost among these is the concept of bribery. As the word states, bribery blinds the wise and distorts the words of the righteous. The Torah of truth itself calls such a person wise and righteous. This is not a case of someone who knows the truth and nevertheless acts against it. We are not dealing with wicked people.
It's very interesting the observation the Rebbe makes. The Rebbe says the Torah calls a person who takes that person, okay? There are people who take bribery and there are wicked people, okay? You give them money and you know that they will rule the way you want. Okay, unfortunately, we're familiar with this. But here, this is not the case where the Torah is speaking, because the Torah is speaking about righteous people. And righteous people, when they are getting involved in bribery, they still consider to be righteous, but they become blind. So they want to rule. They're not wicked people who want to rule according to the one who gave in favor of the one who bribed them. They want to rule right. They want to rule in the right way. But because they were given bribe, so they become blind. And the Rebbe continues to elaborate.
Rather, bribery blinds people's eyes so that they are incapable of seeing the matter as it truly is, and instead develop a different understanding of it. In other words, since this is a wise and intellectually capable person, there is no reason for his intellect itself to change, and indeed, his intellect does not change. The effect of bribery is that the person doesn't perceive the situation properly. They see an opening, but they don't know whether it is a door leading to a good place or the opening of a pit into which they might fall.
Wow. So you become confused. You're smart. You know that there is an opening, but you don't know, because you are blind. You become blind. Once become blind, so he's not sure of what is the reality. He's not sure what's the situation. He's not sure. He's confused as to what is really happening over here. And now the Rebbe brings a very, very interesting example. And some of you will know what is the example better than me. Okay. The Rebbe is going to talk about the relationship of Israel, the state of Israel, with Germany after World War II, after the Holocaust. So let's see.
A new Germany. There is no need for elaborate explanations regarding this point because we have seen this openly in our times. It was a nation which for many years was renowned and prided itself on excelling especially in intellect and science, philosophy, and ethics. Precisely that nation used intellect and science for acts of cruelty against Jews in a manner completely opposed to basic humanity in the worst possible way, unlike anything found among other nations. To this very day, they do not express remorse for this.
Wow. I think it changed ever since regarding the remorse, or at least from
Yeah, they
yeah,
have.
whatever. But so what the Rebbe is speaking about, the Rebbe is speaking about the idea that in the beginning, Israel, when Israel was established in 1948, I think in the beginning, the Israeli passport mentioned that is valid except of Germany. But then in 1952, Ben Gurion signed the Eskem HaShilumim, I don't know how the name of it, the remorse, the compensation agreement between Israel and Germany, where when Germany paid Israel 3 billion marks as a compensation to all the Jewish wealth and all the cruelty that they caused the Jewish people in the Holocaust. Now, the purpose of why Ben Gurion signed this agreement was in order to help Israel survive as a country. Israel was a new, fresh economy that needed a lot of money and to build the economy and also to support the people, Holocaust survivor and other migrants. But there was a very big argument in the among the Israeli society, whether or not this agreement is acceptable or not. So Begin and Herut, they were against this agreement. They said that this agreement means that for money, you're forgiving them, okay? And they said that we shouldn't take any compensation for them, and because if we take the compensation, it means, in other words, that we are sort of forgiving them for what they've caused in the Holocaust to the Jewish people. But anyway, Ben Gurion and Mapai, which was the ruling party at the time, they realized that Israel existence, the state of Israel existence, it's so crucial and it's so fragile that his money is needed in order to keep the people and the state alive. And there was a lot of balagan in Israel. Then in the late 50s, they started, in addition to this financial agreements, there was some sort of security agreements between Israel and Germany, but people did not, the common man did not know about it, only much later. So people went to the Rebbe and asked the Rebbe, what is the Rebbe's opinion if it's acceptable to get this compensation money or not acceptable to get the compensation money? So what the Rebbe said, that first and foremost, it's not a religious question, but it's a moral and ethic question, right? But after the agreement was already signed, and because the state of Israel and Jewish organizations around the world, they already taking the money, so giving that, the individual who will not take the money, it will not change anything in the big picture, right? Because in the big picture, the state of Israel and major Jewish organizations, they are taking money. So therefore, the Rebbe said to take the money, and just for the fact that you are returning the stolen money of the Jewish people. Okay, eventually, this agreement led later to establishing full diplomatic ties between Israel and Germany. So this is in the 50s. Jumping to 1972, September 1972, there was the Olympic in München. right? Some of you remember the Olympic in München. That was before I was born. And Israel
Yes,
sent a team of sport players, and then we all know what happened during this Olympic. But so the Rebbe now speak about this participating in the Olympic Games in 1972. Please, source
This,
number 4.
this
Yes.
event occurred in Germany, where 6 million Jews were killed by those claiming to be a superior nation. Why go there and participate and celebrate with them and try to curry favor with them and demonstrate a friendly relationship, despite knowing that they openly hate Jews? At the very least, they should have skipped this year's Olympics.
Wow. So what the Rebbe says, the Jewish people, how can you in 1972 go and participate in the Olympic in Germany, knowing, until today in some places in Germany, you feel the hate, right? And the Rebbe himself, don't forget that the Rebbe himself was a student in Germany. So he knew just before the war, he knew what is Germany. The Rebbe says, go, don't participate in that Olympic. And the Rebbe says, yes.
One could argue that in the immediate post-war period, there was a need to maintain relations with Germany in order to receive repartitions, but for this, there is no justification.
So they getting the money from Germany right after the war in 1953. There is some sort of justification. There was a big dilemma about it, but there was at least a justification that this money will help the state of Israel to establish itself and will save many Jewish lives. But participating in the Olympic, and as we know, that Olympic, during
it's a
one of the days of the
disaster.
Olympic, the monsters of the Black Septembers, they killed 11 of the Jewish sportists. And when it became public, so they made the Germans, they made in the Olympic, during the games, they made like a small ceremony, and the games continued while it's happening. It's impossible to. The games continues while all the incident is happening, because it took a long time. They continue the games, saying that the games must continue. Okay, and what the point is that they showed how much they care about Jewish blood, which is spilled once again on the land of Germany. So now we are going back to the concept to another talk of the Rebbe, which happened about a year and a half after the Olympic Games and the Olympic massacre. And the Rebbe discussed the idea that people say that Germany has become a new place, and it's a new country, and it's new people, and we can do business with them. Not only do business, but even go and participate on the Olympic. And the Rebbe's approach to it was completely on the other side. And the Rebbe said the whole reason why people make logical argument that we need to make ties and be friendly and participate in Olympic Games on the lands of Germany, it's only because of bribery. And as the Rebbe said before, when a wise person gets bribery, so then he's still wise, he's still trying to be righteous, but he cannot take real a straight decision. That's it in the words of the Rebbe.
And yet, there are those who plead in every possible way to be allowed to go to them and to cooperate with them, not only with regard to the purchase of weapons, but also in other areas such as sports, competitions, and the like. This is out of desire to be like all other nations, like all the nations, the house of Israel. God forbid. Moreover, even after suffering the consequences once, they return and try again.
This is the consequences, meaning the death, the massacre at the Olympic Games. And the Rebbe continues. Yeah.
This is in addition to the general principle that is an established rule that Esau hates Yaakov, as evident even among the best of the nations. Despite witnessing the cruel conduct towards the Jewish people described above, they did not protest. Therefore, special caution is required when bringing someone into a sensitive security position. There needs to be an investigation to determine whether they can be relied upon to help protect the Jewish people and rule out the concern that they might assist the opposing side.
Wow. And the Rebbe continues, yes.
At
First,
first, they argued that the contemporary people are the very same nation and that the obligation to remember and not forget what they did still applies. But after accepting bribes, they began to claim that now this is a different nation, different Germans, contrary to the truth that everyone knows, that they have remained as they were. They make
wow.
this claim only because bribery has completely distorted their judgment.
Wow. So what bribery is capable of? Bribery is capable of distorting your judgment, completely distorting one's judgment. And the Rebbe continues.
With regard to bribery, there is no greater bribe than a person's own sense of self-importance and self-worth, honor, and self-love. This can so thoroughly skew a person's reasoning that they are capable of doing things that are the very opposite of logic.
Wow. So what did the Rebbe learn from all this? The Rebbe learns from all this that from the saga with Germany, the Rebbe learns how much human moral and human ethics can be so unstable, and how people with a lot of passion and a lot of moral can change their perception and can change their way of life just because of interest, honor, money, and change something which was black and white yesterday can change tomorrow to be something of a complete different color. And now, based on this, saying the Rebbe, this is why the Torah, in the middle of all the laws, the Torah says that this says all those laws, the logical laws, they are not based on human logic, because human logic can be today here, tomorrow in a complete, on an opposite place. But the Torah laws, even the logical laws of the Torah, they are God's laws. And therefore, where we draw our wisdom, where we draw our logic is withdrawn from the Torah, which doesn't change, not yesterday and not tomorrow. Let's see it inside.
The lesson we learn from the portion of MISHPATIM is that even with regard to laws that are understood with human logic, the Torah emphasizes that these two were given at Sinai, meaning that they contain an element that transcends reason. At the same time, although these two were given at Sinai beyond reason, they are nevertheless laws that are intelligible to reason. This is because the Torah demands understanding and intellectual comprehension. Torah is supposed to be understood. As a verse states, it is your wisdom and understanding in the eyes of the nation.
Right? So there is an element of wisdom in it. There is an element that every human being, at least those portion, the laws portion of the Torah, that every human being can understand. But, moreover,
intellect is the most precious thing a person possesses, and therefore it must be used in the service of God. Our sages said, the world was not worthy to make use of gold, so why was it created? For the temple. Similarly, the world was not worthy to make use of intellect. It was given only for understanding and comprehending the Torah. It was not given in order to toil intellectually on figuring out how to earn another dollar in order to buy a nicer home or finer possessions.
Wow. So the wisdom, intellect was created what for? For the ability to study and understand Torah. Now, once is it given in this world, it can be used for many other things. The same way that once gold was given, was created to be used for Bet HaMikdash, now you have a new ring, and a new earrings, you also have gold. Okay? But therefore, we know how much we need to be careful in using wisdom to study Torah.
Therefore, we must strive to understand and grasp the Torah to the full extent our intellect allows. But the foundation of this effort is a principle that these two were given at Sinai. This is why the portion of Mishpatim comes after the portion of Yitro, which recounts the giving of the Torah at Sinai and concludes with a section about the altar of earth and the altar of stones. This teaches us that even earth and stones, inanimate materials, can be made into an altar for God. Following this comes a portion of Mishpatim, teaching that we make an altar for God even out of matters that descend into and are expressed through human reason by connecting them to something that transcends reason.
Wow. Okay. So now the Rebbe will explain, based on this explanation, the Rebbe will explain why in the middle of this portion of the Torah Mishpatim, the laws, the Torah stop to say, you know, when the Jews receive the Torah, they first say, we will do, which transgress my logic. And only then they said, let's hear what should we do. Based
We,
on this. Yeah.
we will do and we will listen, even regarding rational commandments. Based on this, we can also understand why the concept of stating we will do before we will listen appears specifically in the portion of Mishpatim. At first glance, this seems out of place in Mishpatim, both in terms of chronology and content. Chronologically, the declaration of we will do before we will listen was made before the giving of the Torah. In the previous portion, in terms of content, placing we will do before we will listen would seem relevant only before hearing, not after one has already heard.
Yeah, and the 10 Commandments we already heard last week. But so what you're gonna say? Yeah, although there is a truth that the rule is, yeah.
Although it is true that the Torah is not bound by chronological order, this does not mean that the Torah was written in an orderless manner. As the Shala writes, any departure from chronological order requires a reason and an explanation. The reason for the appearance of we will do and we will listen in this portion is that the Torah wishes to emphasize that even in matters that are understood by human reason, we must do before we listen.
We must do before we listen, even things that makes perfect logical reasoning. I don't do it only because they make sense. I do it because it's God's commandment. And when I do it only because it's God's commandments, then it prevents that commandments to be changed because of bribery. It makes sure that a mitzvah will be followed all the time at the same way without the changes that we human beings are keep on changing all the time. Let's see the word that the Rebbe finish. Yes.
This is the meaning of the sage's teaching. Do not sit and weigh the commandments of the Torah against each other. At first glance, with regard to laws that are understandable by reason, there would seem to be room to reason that it is worthwhile to give up a lighter matter in order to gain a more weightier one. Therefore, the Torah emphasizes that the lightest of the light is like the most serious of the serious, even though the Torah itself describes one as light and the other as serious.
But why the Torah? So the reason why the Torah described one as light and one as serious, it's the Torah's a calculation. But you If you will start saying, oh, this is more important, this is less important, then you intervene with your own logic, then it can end up in a very, very, very bad place. As we all know what happened in Germany, that because of their logic, they decided to eradicate an entire nation and to kill millions upon millions of people, and that made perfect logical sense to the most of them. This is why when we keep the Torah, every letter of the Torah, every commandment in the Torah is as relevant and as crucial and as important to keep the same way that is written, the same way that has been given traditionally for thousands of years, from father to son to father to son to father to son, until those our forefathers or our fathers who heard it straight from Moshe Rabbeinu, because this is the only way that our Torah will remain, is remaining, and will remain God's Torah, and not human beings who are today here and tomorrow there. Thank you very much. Be'ezrat Hashem, I will look forward to see you in the next week. Yes, next week, Be'ezrat Hashem. I might not be in India, but I will be in a time zone which Be'ezrat Hashem will allow me to connect, Be'ezrat Hashem, and give the class next week.
Where are you going?
I might be in Israel, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
If there are any questions, please feel free to ask. The reason why we might go to Israel next week is because my Chaya's uncle just passed away yesterday. So maybe this Torah study will be in memory of Yaakov ben Harav Yaakov ben Harav Yosef Moshe, that his neshama will have aliyah. He devoted his life to help people.
Amen.
Bezrat Hashem, our Torah study, and all those who will study it online, Bezrat Hashem, will be in memory of his soul. I'm stopping, Bezrat Hashem. I'm stopping the recording, so if anyone has